Greetings. Michael DDA here. Thank you so much for joining me again today. We're continuing our adventure in Torah, our journey through Torah. It's an adventure, living with Yehovah as your only Elohim. It's an adventure. You don't live the way other people live. Not at all. Well, there's so many things that I've found in Yehovah's word that I just want you to see and understand. Last week, we went through Genesis 36, the genealogy of Esau. Who is Edom? So many problems. I don't think we cared very much about Esau's line, and we weren't careful about the things that we wrote. It ended up the same way. Esau was the father of the Edomites. The week before, we saw the leaving for Bethel. Yehovah told Jacob to go to Bethel, where he had met with him when he was going to Haran. Bethel being the house of Elohim, Elohim's house, Bet-El. The week before, we saw that it was about Dinah. Dinah had been taken and raped. That sounds a little bit like trafficking to me. Could that be? She was taken and she was raped by Shechem. The boys, Simeon and Levi, cleaned their clock, killed 600 men. And at the end of this chapter, this is 34, it said that Jacob was mad at Simeon and Levi. Of all things, he saved their sister, killed all these people. And he says, let me just read it. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me. I'm on verse 30. You have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me and destroy me, my household and I. And they ended up by saying, should they treat our sister as a harlot? Well, no, they can't treat their sister. It was an act of war. We discussed that in this chapter. It was an act of war. You don't take another man's woman. It's war. Well, from there, we saw in Yasher that 10,000 Amorites, they call them Canaanites and Amorites. They're going to say it again today. An Amorite is a Canaanite. They could say Amorites and Perizzites. Those are kind of the inhabitants of the land. But primarily, we're talking about Amari's seed, Amorites, that were coming against us. 10,000. Yehovah, because Jacob prayed, because Isaac prayed, held back and told their advisors, really warned their advisors, reminded their advisors about all the things that had happened with Abraham and the Hebrew and his seed. Well, they ended up showing discretion and going away. Took us a whole week to go through those 2 chapters in Yasher. Those 2 chapters ended with the very next verse that we saw in 35. Then Yehovah said to Jacob, go up to Bethel. So 2 weeks ago, we saw that Jacob and his sons went to Bethel. This is where Jacob is actually going to be really named Israel. During that time, we saw that Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, who had been with them since 91, Jacob was 91, she came asking for a messenger for her mother, his mother, asking them to return. He stayed for another 6 years, but Deborah stayed with them since they had young kids and helped raise the kids. So they made it to Bethel, and at Bethel, Rachel has Benjamin and dies in the birth. And this chapter ended with, look what it says in 35, 27. Then Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre in Kirjath Arba, that is Hebron. All those different places are names for Hebron. Mamre, Kirjath Arba, Hebron. And in the very next verse, it says, now the days of Isaac were 180 years old. Do you know that between 27 and 28, 20 years went by? What happened during those 20 years? Why does Torah leave this out? And it makes me wonder, all the things that we see in Yasher, the great things that are being done by Elohim for his people, they're left out. Has Torah been edited? Is it possible? I think it might be possible. Because what happened during this 20 years? We're going to see from chapter 37 all the way to 47 of Yasher. That's a lot of material. Is covered between verse 27 and verse 28. Oh my goodness. Father, open our eyes. If some of the material that we are going to cover right now was to be in the Torah, would we possibly have a much mightier people on the earth for Yehovah? I think we would. Jacob's seed, Israel's seed, are not like the men of the earth. They're a different variety altogether. They're Yehovah's second-born sons, Ezra men. We don't know what an Ezra man is. Go to my Torah or go to my website, weareisrael.com. Search for the Born Again series and read it. Find out how a man, Ben Nakar, son of a foreigner, who doesn't know Yehovah, becomes a Tosha by knowing Yehovah, interacting with Israel. And then later, when they leave the kingdom of their birth, they can join themselves to Israel and make Yehovah their only Elohim. They're leaving their other Elohim. At Passover, they become Ezra men. They're circumcised, eat the Passover, and they become born in the land Ezra men. That is Israel. It happens at the time of life, which is Passover. Well, let's begin with Yasher today. And the last thing we saw was Jacob and his sons coming to Hebron at 100 years old. Oh, you know what? I want to just go over something really quick. This is my timeline. I want you to see the timeline. Here we are, 84. Jacob takes Leah and Rachel. This is when he's 84 years old. He has 10 kids between 84 and 91. At 97, he leaves Haran, heading to Shechem. Really heading to Canaan. He went to Shechem first. He was there for a couple of years. On his way there, Laban confronts him and wants his gods back and makes a big brouhaha, and also he breaks the covenant that he made with Jacob, sends him to Esau. Esau comes to Jacob. That's 97. Again, they said Jacob got his name here. He didn't get his name here. What it said in both places? He got a new name, Israel? Come on. This is not it. Hebron is where he got, or Bethel is where he got it. Now it says that Jacob went to Shechem. He stayed in Shechem for 2 years, 2.5 years even. During that time, 97, Dinah is taken. They're having a party. All the girls go there. Dinah is taken by Shechem. I wonder if she was trafficked. She was stolen? That sounds a bit like trafficking to me. Regardless, they wouldn't give her back. So they made a covenant with the men of the city. You do this, you get circumcised. They did it so they could weaken them, so the boys could take them out. Well, they saved their sister. Again, 99. Here we are, 99, Rachel dies. Now, finally, they're in Bethel. Oh, do I have Deborah dying twice? No, that's Deborah dying, and then we have Rebecca dying at 130. Jacob would have been 100. That makes sense. There he is, 100. So then he's named Israel here, truly. And then it says Jacob leaves Hebron and he's going to, leaves Bethel and he's going to Hebron. Rachel, during that time, has a hard delivery. She dies. Benjamin is born. Then they finally arrive in Hebron. And the next thing we know, it's 20 years later, so from 100 all the way down to 120 is where Isaac's going to die. What's going to happen during that 20 years? And that's what we're beginning with today. Sorry, that was a bit of a long introduction. Here we are, 37. I'm going to try and get through 37 and 38 today. That's just 2 days. 2 days. In the 105th year of the life of Jacob. The boys, look, this is 5 years later. 5 years after he gets to Hebron, he's going to leave Hebron and he's going to go back to Shechem. It said Israel's 11 sons, except for Benjamin, 5, are all between the ages of 13 and 20. 13 and 20. That's pretty young. Remember, when the boys took out Shechem, Simeon and Levi were 13 and 12. Now, 5 years later, they're 20. Remember, time's gone by even before the time they took out Shechem. Let me continue. And in the 105th year of the life of Jacob, that is in the 8th year of Jacob dwelling with his sons in the land of Canaan. We're going to see this is his sons. They say his children is the translator that did that. It's his sons. They don't talk about daughters. They're trying to say children because Rachel or Dinah is with them. But it's not about the girls. It's always about the boys. It's going to be his sons in the land of Canaan after they came from Paddan Aram. And in those days, Jacob journeyed with his sons from Hebron, and they went and returned to the city of Shechem. They and all belonging to them, and they dwelt there, for Jacob's seed obtained good and fat pasture land for their cattle in the city of Shechem. Remember, they're with their father, and that's why Esau left, because there just wasn't enough pasture land in Hebron. They're going back to Shechem. Cattle in the city of Shechem, pasture land for their cattle in the city of Shechem, the city of Shechem having been rebuilt. And there was about 300 men and women there. Remember, there was 600 men before, plus their women, plus their children. And Jacob and his sons and all belonging to him dwelt in the part of the field which Jacob had bought from Hamor, the son of Shechem, when he came from Paddan, before Simeon and Levi had smitten the city. And all those kings of Canaan all those kings of the Canaanites and the Amorites that surrounded the city of Shechem heard that Jacob's seed had again come to Shechem to dwell there. Remember, it says Canaanites and Amorites. Keep in mind, one of the sons of Canaan is Amari. Amari is a Canaanite. Canaanites and Amorites. That makes sense. And they said, shall Jacob's, the Hebrew seed, again come to the city and dwell therein, after that they have smitten its inhabitants and driven them out? Shall they now return and also drive out those who are dwelling in the city, or slay them? These are all ifs. Shall they? Maybe they will. And all the kings of Canaan again assembled. Well, now that makes sense. Kings of Canaan. And they came together to make war with Jacob and his sons. So here now they're saying his sons. I'm sure it's the same word in Hebrew. His sons, his children. They're just playing with it because they don't know what to do with it. Because they treat men and women alike, and men and women are not the same. Yasher, king of Tapnach, sent also to all the neighboring kings, to Elan, king of Gaash, to Ikuri, king of Shiloh, to Partan, king of Khazar, to Susi, king of Sartan, to Lavan, king of Beth-Karan, and Shaver, king of Athneh-Ma, saying, this is what he's saying to them, he sent to 7 kings, he sent to 6 kings, all 7 kings altogether, come up and assist me, and let us smite Jacob the Hebrew and his sons, and all belonging to him, for they are again come to Shechem to possess it, and to slay the inhabitants as before. Who said anything about slaying inhabitants? They're dwelling there peacefully. You know, this is what Israel does. They dwell peacefully on the earth. They don't mess with other people until they get messed with. But you mess with Israel's seed, oh, you're messing with something very, very dangerous. Look what he says. Come up to me, assist me. Let us smite Jacob the Hebrew and his sons, and all belonging to him, for they are again come to Shechem to possess it and to slay its inhabitants as before. And all these kings assembled together and came with all their camps, a people exceedingly plentiful, like the sand of the seashore. And they were all opposite Tapnach. And Yasher, king of Tapnach, went forth to them with all his army, and he encamped with them opposite Tapnach, without the city. And all these kings they divided into 7 divisions. Well, there's 7 kings, 7 divisions. That makes sense, being 7 camps against Jacob's seed. And they sent a declaration to Jacob and his sons, saying, come you all forth to us, that we may have an interview together in the plain, and revenge the cause of Shechem's men whom you slew in the city. That sounds like more than a conversation, doesn't it? An interview sounds like a battle. And you will again return, and you will now return to Jacob. And you will now again return to the city of Shechem and dwell therein and slay its inhabitants as before. Well, they're being a little presumptuous. They said nothing about that. And Jacob's seed heard this, and their anger was kindled exceedingly at the words of the kings of Canaan. And 10 of Jacob's sons' seed, hastened and rose up, each of them girt on his weapons of war. And there were 102 of their servants with them equipped in battle array. I wonder if any of these servants were ex-Shechemites. Might be. We have 112 men against number of the sands of the sea. It's a whole bunch of folks that they're going to battle against. Plus Jacob, 113. All these men, Jacob's sons with their servants, went towards these kings, and Jacob their father was with them. And they all stood upon the heap of Shechem. What is the heap of Shechem? Is it a garbage dump? Is it a vantage point? A heap? Heap is something that you build up. I don't know. Sounds like maybe it's the garbage dump. And Jacob prayed to Yehovah for his sons. You know, I love that they are always depending on Yehovah to protect them. And he spread forth his hands to Yehovah. And he said, "O Elohim, thou art El Shaddai," is the word they're saying here. Almighty God, El Shaddai. Remember, El Shaddai, a provision from a strong authority. He's going to provide their needs. Thou art our Father. Can the Canaanites say Yehovah is their father? No. You know, there's a lot of Christians that say Yehovah is their father. Based on what? Do you have a covenant with him? Thou didst form us. When did he form you? He formed you at Passover. He created you and then formed you. Look at this. I think I can make this maybe a pinch bigger. Thought I had meant to do that earlier, but I didn't. It says, "But now, thus says Yehovah, who created you? Created you, O Jacob, he who formed you, O Israel." Israel is the spiritually born man. Created is the Adam. Israel is the Ish, the Enoshim for plural. Spiritually born Ezra men. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Here is another one, 43:7. Everyone who is called by my name, whom I have created for my glory, I have formed him. Yes, I have made him. Creation and forming are two different things. We're talking about spiritually born men here. Thou didst form us, and we are the works of thy hand. I pray thee, deliver my sons through thy mercy from the hands of their enemies, who are this day coming to fight with them, and save them from their hands. For in thy hand is power and might to save the few from the many. Oh, is this exactly what's going on? And give unto my sons, thy servants, thy servants, my sons are thy servants, Yehovah, strength of heart and might to fight with their enemies, to subdue them, and to make their enemies fall before them. And let not my sons and their servants die through the hands of Canaan's seed. Protect them, Father. But if it seems good in thy eyes to take away the lives of my sons and their servants, take them then in thy great mercy through the hands of thy ministers. Take them with angels. Don't let the Amorites do it, that they may not perish this day by the hands of the kings of the Amorites. And Jacob ceased praying to Yehovah. Look at this. He's going to cease praying to Yehovah, and the earth shook from its place, and the sun darkened. And all these kings were terrified at the great consternation seized them. Does that remind you of anything? Look at this. This is David's prayer when he's ending his life. Beautiful, chapter 22, amazing chapter. In my distress, I called upon Yehovah and cried out to my Elohim. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry entered his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations of the heavens quaked and were shaken because he was angry. You don't want to anger Yehovah. Ecclesiastes, that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It's already been in ancient times before us. We've got to learn the history. I want to go one other place. Let me go here. I want to go, because this is so apropos. I think I've got it here. Nope, this is not the one I want. I want this one. And I don't want that opening up. I've got another something opening here. There it goes. Okay. I want to go to Joel. Listen to Joel talking about the shaking of the earth, the sun darkening. Blow a trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let the inhabitants of the land tremble. For the day of Yehovah is coming, for it is at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess. Does that sound like maybe the day we're talking about right now? A day of clouds and thick darkness. Like the morning clouds spread over the mountains. A people come, great and strong. This is something that's going to happen in the future. The like of whom has never been, nor will there be any such as them, even for many successive generations. We're going to see what these men look like today, and next week, and next week. Fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like a Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Surely nothing shall escape them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like swift steeds, so they run. With noise like chariots. We're going to see all this today. Over mountaintops they leap. Like the noise of a flaming fire over mountaintops. More powerful than a locomotive, able to leap over tall buildings. How does it go? Over mountaintops they leap. Like the noise of a flaming fire that devours the stubble. Like a strong people set in battle array. Before them, the people writhe in pain. All faces are drained of color. They run like mighty men. They climb the wall like men of war. Everyone marches in formation, and they do not break ranks. They do not push one another. Everyone marches in his own column. Though they lunge between the weapons, they are not cut down. We're going to see all this today. They run to and fro in the city. They run on the wall. They climb into the houses. They enter at the window like a thief. Look what it says. The earth quakes before them. The heavens tremble. The sun and the moon grow dark. The stars diminish in brightness. Yehovah gives voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For strong is the one who executes his word. For the day of Yehovah is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? Well, we're going to stop here. This is really what I wanted you to see. We'll move this out of the way. The earth shook. The sun darkened. All the kings were terrified. With great consternation seized them. And Yehovah hearkened to the prayer of Jacob. And Yehovah impressed the hearts of the kings and their hosts with terror and awe of Jacob's seed, Israel's seed. For Yehovah caused them to hear the voice of chariots, the sound of chariots. We just talked about the sound of chariots, the sounds of mighty horses from Jacob's seed, and the voice of a great army accompanying them. So we just read in Joel. And these kings were seized with great terror at Jacob's seed. And whilst they were standing in their quarters, behold, Jacob's seed advanced upon them. Oh my gosh! 13 men. Mostly, some of them young men, coming to this vast array of thousands, like the sands of the sea. And they see these few coming against the many, advancing towards them, 112 men, with a great and tremendous shouting. Keep in mind, these guys are 13 to 20 years old. They are young men. And when the king saw Jacob's seed advancing toward them, they were still more panic struck, and they were inclined to retreat before Jacob's seed, as at first, when they did the first time. What was that? 8 years ago. And did not fight with them. And not to fight with them. Well, that would have been a better idea, you guys. You didn't. And they did not retreat. But they did not retreat, saying, it would be a disgrace to us. Thus twice to retreat from before the Hebrews. No, that would have been smart of you. What do I have here? Pride is going to get them killed. You will save the humble people, but your eyes are on the haughty, that you bring them down. You know, we haven't seen, so many people are saying, oh, look what Yehovah is doing in the earth right now. You know, the white hats are doing some good things. It appears to me. But you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till Yehovah begins to act for his people. That's still going to happen in the future. Don't discount it. What has been will be again. Well, it says the sons of Jacob came near and advanced against all these kings and their armies. And they saw, and behold, it was a very mighty people, numerous as the sands of the sea. And Jacob's seed called unto Yehovah. Now they're going to pray and said, help us, Yehovah, help us and answer us, for we trust in thee. And let us not die by the hands of these uncircumcised men. Yes. Isn't this exactly what David said with overwhelming odds? Little David with a 12-foot giant. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach of Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living Elohim? Your servant has killed both lion and bear. This is still David talking. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living Elohim. This is their attitude right now. Who this day have come against us? And Jacob's seed girt on their weapons of war, and they took in their hands each man his shield and his javelin, and they approached to battle. And Judah, remember Judah is the kingly office. We saw that right after his father took away the kingly, the priestly, and the kind of the Melchizedek office from Reuben and gave it to Judah, Simeon, and Levi. No, Judah, Levi, was it Simeon? Judah, Levi. Oh, and Joseph. And Judah. So he is got the kingly responsibility. The king is going to lead his people. He's the fourth born of Leah, 15 years old. This is Judah, son of Jacob. Ran first before his brethren and 10 of his servants with him. And he went towards these kings. And Yasher, king of Tapnach, also came forth first from his army before Judah. And Judah saw Yasher and his army coming towards him, and Judah's wrath was kindled, and his anger burned within him, and he approached to battle with Judah. They approached to battle in which Judah ventured his life. Yeah, Judah is venturing his life for sure. And Yasher and all his army were advancing toward Judah. 11 guys, Judah and 10 servants. And he was riding upon a very strong and powerful horse. Remember, Judah's on foot. Yasher was a very valiant man, covered with iron and brass from head to foot. And while he was upon the horse, he shot arrows with both hands before and behind, as was his manner in all battles. He could shoot in front of him. He could shoot behind him. His horse is still going to be going. He never missed the place which he aimed his arrows. Guy's pretty good. And when Yasher came to fight with Judah and was darting many arrows at Judah, Yehovah bound the hand of Yasher, and all the arrows that he shot rebounded upon his own men. He's killing his own guys. Notwithstanding this, Yasher kept advancing toward Judah to challenge him with arrows. But the distance between them was 30 cubits, 45 feet. And when Judah saw Yasher darting forth his arrows against him, he ran to him with a wrath excited might. He's closing the gap. And Judah took up a large stone from the ground. Its weight was 60 shekels. I have no idea how much 60 shekels weighs. And Judah ran toward Yasher, and with the stone struck him on the shield, that Yasher was stunned with the blow and fell from the horse to the ground. It was a heavy rock. I couldn't shoot him. He's covered with iron and brass. Got a shield on a horse. Let's dismount him, take the stone, knock him to the ground. And the shield burst asunder. He hit him so hard out of the hand of Yasher, and through the force of the blow sprang to the distance of about 15 cubits, 22 feet. And the shield fell before him 22.5 feet before him to the second camp. And the kings that came with Yasher saw at a distance the strength of Judah. They're just fighting with the one guy and his 10 servants, the son of Jacob, and what he had done to Yasher. And they were terribly afraid of Judah. And they assembled near Yasher's camp, seeing his confusion. And Judah drew his sword and smote 42 men of the camp of Yasher. And the whole of Yasher's camp fled before Judah, and no man stood against him. And they left Yasher and fled from him, and Yasher was still prostrate on the ground. And Yasher, seeing that all his men of his camp had fled from him, hastened and rose up with terror against Judah, and stood upon his feet opposite Judah. And Yasher had a single combat with Judah, placed shield toward shield. And Yasher's men fled, for they were greatly afraid of Judah. And Yasher took his spear in his hand to strike Judah upon the head. But Judah had quickly placed his shield to his head against Yasher's spear. So the shield of Judah received the blow, and Yasher's spear received the blow from Yashav's spear, and the shield was split in two. Then Judah saw that his shield was split. He hastily drew his sword, smote Yashav at his ankles, and cut off his feet. That Yashav fell to the ground, and the spear fell from his hand. He was covered with iron and brass. He got him at his weakest spot, at the ankles, cut off his feet. And Judah hastily picked up Yashav's spear with which he had severed his head and cast it next to his feet. A little pile, 2 feet in the head. And when Jacob's seed saw what Judah had done to Yashav, they all ran into the ranks of the other kings. And Jacob's seed fought with the army of Yashav and the armies of all the kings that were there. And Jacob's seed caused 15,000 of the men to fall. 15,000! And they smote them as if smiting at gourds. And the rest fled from their lives, fled for their lives. And Judah was still standing by the body of Yashav and stripped Yashav of his coat of mail. Judah also took off the iron and the brass that was upon Yashav, and behold, 9 men of the captains of Yashav came along to fight against Judah. So now here's 9 more men coming at Judah. And Judah hastened and took up a stone from the ground, and with it smote one of them upon the head, and his skull was fractured, and the body fell from the horse to the ground. These men are all on horseback. And the 8 captains that remained, seeing the strength of Judah, were greatly afraid, and they fled. And Judah with 10 of his men pursued them, and they overtook them and slew them. This is again from David's prayer. He teaches my hands to make war, so that my arms can bend a brass bow. You have also given me the shield of your salvation. Your gentleness has made me great. You enlarged my path under me, so that my feet did not slip. I have pursued my enemies and destroyed them. Neither did I turn back again till they were destroyed. This is where we're going here in the next 7 days. And Jacob's seed were still smiting the armies of the kings, and they slew many of them. But those kings daringly kept their stand. Daringly, yes, they were daring, with their captains, and did not retreat from their places. And they exclaimed. They're saying they called. It says they exclaimed against those of their armies that had fled. They called to the armies that had fled from before Jacob's seed, but none would listen to them, for they were afraid for their lives, lest they should die. And Jacob's seed, after having smitten the armies of the kings, returned and came to Judah. And Judah was still slaying the 8 captains of Yashav and stripping their garments. And Levi saw Elon, king of Gaash, advancing towards him with his 14 captains to smite him. But Levi did not know it for certain. And Elon with his captains approached nearer, and Levi looked back and saw the battle was given to him in the rear. And Levi ran with 12 of his servants. He had 12 servants. So if we had 10 brothers with 10 servants, that would be 100. And then there's 2 more. Maybe Levi got the extra 2. I don't know. And they went and slew Elon and his captain with the edge of the sword. Levi ran with his 12 servants and slew Elon with the edge of the sword. So now this is the first battle. We're still in the first day. We're going to finish the day now. And Nekari, king of Shiloh, came up to assist Elon. And he approached Jacob when Jacob drew his bow. He's going after Jacob now. Jacob drew his bow that was in his hand, and with an arrow struck Ikari, which caused his death. And when Ikari, the king of Shiloh, was dead, the 4 remaining kings fled from their stations with the rest of the captains, and they endeavored to retreat, saying, "We have no more strength with the Hebrews," after their having killed the 3 kings and their captains, who were more powerful than we are. They're already getting concerned. And when Jacob's seed saw that the remaining kings had removed from the station, they pursued them. And Jacob also came from the heap of Shechem, from the place where he had been standing. That's where he'd been shooting from. And they went after the kings, and they approached them with their servants. And the kings and the captains, with the rest of their army, seeing that Jacob's seed approached them, were afraid for their lives, and fled till they reached the city of Khazar. And Jacob's seed pursued them to the gates of the city of Khazar, and they smote a great smiting amongst the kings and their armies, about 4,000 men. So we had 12,000. Now we've got another we had 15,000 killed. Now here's another 4,000 killed. We're up to 19,000 by the 13 men. And whilst they were smiting the army of the kings, Jacob was occupied with his bow, confining himself to smiting kings. And he slew them all, got them all. He slew Parathon, king of Khazar, at the gate of the city of Khazar. He afterwards smote Susi, king of Sartan, Lavan, king of Bethkaran, Shavir, king of Nema, and he slew them all with his arrows, an arrow to each of them, and they died. Must have been a great shot. And Jacob's seed, seeing that all the kings were dead, and that they were broken up and retreating, continued to carry on the battle with the armies of the kings opposite the gate of Khazar, and they still smote about 400 of their men. How many are going to die in this battle? Who knows? And 3 men of the servants of Yaakov fell in the battle. So we've lost 3 men. These are the only 3 men that we're going to lose in 7 days. And when Judah saw that 3 of his servants had died, it grieved him greatly. And his anger burned within him against the Amorites. And all the men that remained of the armies of the kings were greatly afraid of their lives. And they ran and broke the gate of the walls. This is the armies of the kings breaking down the gates of the walls of the city Khazar. They all entered the city for safety. So they actually broke open the city so they could escape. Now the sons of Jacob can get in. And they concealed themselves in the midst of the city of Khazar. And the city of Khazar was very large and extensive. And when all these armies had entered the city, Jacob's seed ran after them to the city. And 4 mighty men, experienced in battle, went forth from the city and stood against the entrance of the city, with drawn swords and spears in their hands. And they placed themselves opposite Jacob's seed and would not suffer them to enter the city. Remember, the gates are down. These are the only guys that are keeping anybody out of the city. Look what it says. And Naphtali ran and came between them with his swords, smote 2 of them, and cut off their heads in one stroke. Naphtali, we're going to see, is very, very swift on his feet. They said he could run over the tops of wheat. Wow, that's fast. We're going to see. And he turned to the other 2, and behold, they had fled. And he pursued them, overtook them, and smote them, and slew them. He took care of them by himself. 4 of them. Naphtali. Where's Naphtali? Naphtali is Naphtali is Bilhah's second-born son. Remember, it was Dan and Bilhah. We're going to see these guys work together as teams over and over again. Pretty interesting. smote them all. And Jacob's seed came to the city and saw, and behold, there was another wall to the city. They had another wall. They broke down one gate, but there was another wall. And they sought for the gate of the wall and could not find it. And Judah sprang up to the top of the wall. Hear that? He jumped to the top of the wall. Look at this. This is Psalms. For by you I can run against a troop. By my Elohim I can leap over a wall. By my Elohim I can leap over a wall. But the noise of the chariots, this is what we read in Joel. I'm not going to read this again. But we're talking about all faces are drained in color. They run like mighty men. They climb the wall like men of war. They don't climb the wall. They jump the wall. They run to and fro in the city. They run on the wall. Simeon, it says Judah sprang onto the wall. Simeon and Levi, his two older brothers. Remember, it goes Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. And they all three descended from the wall into the city. And Simeon and Levi slew all the men who ran for safety into the city and all the inhabitants of the city with their women and little ones. They're killing the women and the children. They slew at the edge of the sword, and the cries of the city ascended to heaven. Dan and Naphtali were Bilhah's sons, sprang upon the wall to see what caused. Again, they're jumping up on a wall. These walls are not made to jump over. The average person does not jump on a wall. No, this is something that these men can do. And wait till you see how high they can jump. See what caused the noise and the lamentation. They sprang to the wall to see what the noise and lamentation was. For Jacob's seed felt anxious about their brothers, Judah, Simeon, Levi, and they heard the inhabitants of the city speaking with weeping and supplication, saying, "Take all that we possess in the city and go away. Do not put us to death." And Judah, Simeon, and Levi had ceased smiting the inhabitants of the city. And when they had ceased smiting the inhabitants, they ascended the wall and called to Dan and Naphtali, who were upon the wall, and to the rest of their brothers, Simeon and Levi, informed them of the entrance of the city. And all Jacob's seed came to fetch the spoil. The spoil is all the stuff. We have spoil and we have, what's it called? Booty. Booty. Booty is people, the virgins, the captives, the sheep, the cattle. Spoil and booty, two different things. They're collecting the spoil right now. What is the spoil? The flocks, the herds, and the property. They took all that they had. They took all that they could, could be captured and went away that day from the city. So this is the first day. We're just now finishing the first day. Now it says, and the next day, Jacob's seed went to Sartan, for they heard that the men of Sartan had remained in the city, were assembling to fight with them, having slain their king. And Sartan was a very high and fortified city, and it had a deep rampart surrounding the city. And the pillar of the rampart, this is a little hard to understand. Here's what I've got. What's going on here? Let's open this up, bring it up here. All right, make it 14. A rampart is a defensive perimeter that must be crossed before one reaches the wall or main defense. Probably a hole filled with spikes or other traps, even water. This word may have to do with the height difference between the base of the wall and the bottom of the rampart. Maybe. It says, and the pillar of the rampart was 50 cubits. 50 cubits is 75 feet. And its breadth was 40 cubits. Let me see my note again. Is this the same note? Feels like the same note. No, it's not. This would indicate the difference between the main wall and the fortifying wall that surrounded it. Probably the area between these two walls was filled with water, so the only way into the city was over a bridge, which they withdrew into the city. We're going to see that in verse 24. I'm not going to read it now. It says, and there was no place for man to enter the city on account of the rampart. And Jacob's seed saw the rampart of the city, and they sought an entrance in it, but could not find it. And the entrance of the city was in the rear. And every man that wished to come to the city came by the road and went around the whole city, and afterwards he entered the city. And Jacob's seed, seeing they could not find a way into the city, their anger was kindled greatly. And the inhabitants of the city, seeing that Jacob's seed were coming to them, were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Khazar. And the inhabitants of the city Sartan could not go out toward the sons of Jacob after having assembled in the city to fight against them, lest they, because if they go out, they have to lower the bridge, and then the guys could come in. They might thereby get into the city. But when they saw that they were coming towards them, they were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Khazar. So the inhabitants of Sartan speedily took away the bridge of the road to the city from the place where before the sons of Jacob came, and they brought it into the city. So there must have been a collapsing bridge, perhaps, a folding bridge maybe, something that was able to bring into the city. And the sons of Jacob came and sought a way into the city and could not find it. And the inhabitants of the city went up to the top of the wall and saw and beheld Jacob's seed were seeking an entrance to the city. Now look at what they do. And the inhabitants of the city reproached Jacob's seed. Bad idea. From the top of the wall, and they cursed them. And Jacob's seed heard the reproaches, and they were greatly incensed, and their anger burned against them. We were talking about, I don't think I talked about it in here yet. I was talking with V before we started about loving your enemies as yourself. This is what supposedly we're told, and then you've heard, love your enemy, or do love good and love your enemies as your baloney. When do you love your enemies? Are they loving their enemies right now? Did David love his enemies? Is it possible that as a false narrative given to us by the Catholic Church to keep us sedate, they don't give us this kind of information because we might be too bold? So they want to keep us sedate. Love your enemies. Do good those who persecute you. Yeah, they're persecuting us. But they tell us to be good, be nice people. Oh my gosh, we've learned so many lies. And Jacob's seed were provoked at them. And they all rose and sprang over the rampart with the force of their strength. They all jumped. What did we say? 40 feet, 60 feet. Yeah, here it is right here, 60 feet. 60, they jumped it. And they rose and sprang over the rampart with the force of their strength, and through their might passed the 40-cubit breadth of the rampart. And when they had passed the rampart, they stood upon the wall of the city, and they found all the gates of the city enclosed with iron. They stood under the wall, under the wall. All the gates are sealed and closed with iron doors. And Jacob's seed came near to break open the doors of the gates of the city, and the inhabitants did not let them. For from the top of the walls they were casting stones and arrows upon them. And the number of the people that were upon the wall was 400 men. And when Jacob's seed saw that the men of the city would not let them open the gates of the city, they sprang and ascended to the top of the wall. Hear that? Judah went up first to the east part of the wall. They went up 50, what is this? I think it was 75 cubits, as I recall. And the pillar of the rampart was 50 cubits. 50 cubits is 75 feet. 75 feet. Sprang and ascended 75 feet to the top of the wall. Talk about a jump. Went up first to the east part. This is Judah. Went up first to the east part of the city. Gad and Yasher went to the west part of the city. Gad and Yasher are Zilpah's sons. Simeon and Levi, again his brethren, went to the north side, and Dan and Reuben went to the south side. Oh my gosh! They can all jump that high. And the men who were on top of the wall, the inhabitants of the city, seeing that Jacob's seed were coming up to them, they all fled from the wall. They run on the wall. They run to and fro in the city. They run on the wall. They climb into the houses. They enter the windows like a thief. Descended into the city and concealed themselves in the midst of the city. This is all the people of the land that were on the wall. And Issachar and Naphtali that remained under the wall. These are the last two that were under the wall. You know, we haven't heard about Zebulun. Zebulun has not been mentioned yet. His youngest son, probably the youngest of all 10 who are fighting. I think he must be around 10 years old. Perhaps he was back with his dad, is my guess. And Issachar and Naphtali, Issachar and Zebulun are what did we just say in Zebulun? Yeah, Zebulun was the youngest, Leah's youngest. So Issachar and Naphtali was Leah's fifth born and Bilhah's second born. That remained under the wall, approached and broke the gates of the city and kindled a fire at the gates of the city and melted the iron. And Jacob's seed came into the city and all their men, and they fought with the inhabitants of the city of Sartan and smote them with the edge of the sword, and no man stood before them. And about 200 men fled from the city. And they all went and hid themselves in a certain tower in the city, from the city to in the city. I'm not sure of what's going on. Judah pursued them to the tower, broke down the tower, which fell upon the men, and they all died. And Jacob's seed went up the road to the roof, up the road of the roof of that tower. And they saw, and behold, there was another strong and high tower, and at a distance in the city, and the top of it reached the heavens. And Jacob's seed hastened and descended and went with all their men to the tower, and found it filled with 300 men, women, and little ones. And Jacob's seed smote a great smiting among those men in the tower, and they ran away and fled from them. Simeon and Levi pursued them, with 12 mighty and valiant men came out. So they're going after them. Now all of a sudden, 12 mighty men, valiant, came out. Well, what was happening to them from a place where they had been concealed. It was like an ambush. And these 12 men maintained a strong battle against Simeon and Levi. And Simeon and Levi could not prevail over them. And those valiant men broke the shield of Simeon and Levi. And one of them struck Levi's head with his sword when Levi hastily placed his hand to his head for he was afraid of the sword, and the sword struck Levi's hand, and it wanted but little to the hand of Levi being cut off. So he almost had his hand cut off. This is the first real injury that we've had among Israel's seed, and I think it's the last injury that we're going to have. Levi's fighting in pain now. Levi sees the sword of the valiant man in his hand, so God used his other hand, and took it forcibly from the man, and with it struck at the head of the powerful man and severed his head. And 11 men, remember this, there's 12, so now there's 11, and 11 men approached to fight Levi, for they saw that one of them was killed. And Jacob's seed, and this is Jacob's seed, Levi and Simeon, fought. But Jacob's seed could not prevail over them. Simeon and Levi could not prevail over them, for those men were very powerful. And Jacob's seed, seeing that they could not prevail over them, again, same boys, Simeon and Levi, could not prevail over them. Simeon gave a loud and tremendous shriek. This is the first time we're hearing this shriek being done. They have a voice. We're going to see it many times in Yasher. They can screams. Teruah is a great shout. Teruah. I think that's what this is. This is a teruah. And the sons of Jacob, seeing that they could not prevail over them, Simeon gave a loud and tremendous teruah. I think this is what we're talking about. And the 11 powerful, let me just read this first. 11 powerful men were stunned at the voice of Simeon's shrieking. We're going to see this many times. He will lift up his banner to the nations from afar and will whistle to them from the ends of the earth. Surely they shall come with speed swiftly. No one will be weary or stumble among them. No one will slumber or sleep, nor will the belt on their loins be loosened, or the strap of their sandals be broken, whose arrows are sharp and their bows bent. Their horses' hooves will seem like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Their roaring, here it is, the roaring will be like a lion. They will roar like young lions. Yes, they will roar and lay hold of the prey. They will carry it away safely, and no one will deliver. In that day they will roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one looks to the land, behold, darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened by the clouds. Here's another one, Numbers 24. Elohim brings him out of Egypt like the strength of a wild ox. He shall consume. This is Balaam, I think, speaking this. He shall consume the nations, his enemies, like grass. Where's love your neighbor as yourself there? He shall break their bones and pierce them with arrows. He bows down, he lies down like a lion, and as a lion, who shall rouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. Set up a standard toward Zion. Take refuge. Do not delay, for I will bring disaster from the north, and great destruction. The lion has come up from his thicket. The destroyer of nations is on his way. This is Israel. He has gone forth from his place to make the land desolate. This is what we saw in Joel. Your cities will be laid waste without inhabitants. That's the roaring of a lion. And Judah, at a distance, knew the voice of Simeon's shouts, and Naphtali and Judah ran with their shields to Simeon and Levi and found them fighting with those powerful men, unable to prevail over them as their shields were broken. And Naphtali saw that the shield of Simeon and Levi were broken, and he took 2 shields from his servants and brought them to Simeon and Levi. I love it. Isn't it great how the brothers watch over each other. I like how they watch over each other. Simeon and Levi and Judah on that day fought all three against the 11 men until the time of sunset. So this is going to be the end of the third day, and they could not prevail over them. And this was told unto Jacob. No, this is the end of the second day. Yeah, this is the end of the second day. And this was told unto Jacob, and he was sorely grieved, and he prayed to Yehovah. He and Naphtali, his son, went against these mighty men. Jacob approached and drew. So there's still 11 men here, unable to deal with them. Jacob approached and drew his bow and came nigh unto the mighty men and slew 3 of their men with the bow. And the remaining 8 turned back, and behold, the war raged against them in the front and the rear. And they were greatly afraid. There's 8 men left. They're afraid for their lives and could not stand before Jacob's seed, and they fled from before them. And in their flight, they met Dan and Asher. Dan and Asher. Bilhah's firstborn, Gad's, Zilpah's firstborn, coming towards them. And they suddenly fell upon them and fought with them and slew them. And Judah and his brothers pursued them and smote the remainder of them and slew them. And Jacob's seed returned and walked about the city, searching if they could find any men. And they found about 20 young men in a cave in the city. It must have been a big city. They got a cave in their city. And Gad and Asher smote them all. And Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher, Zilpah's sons, Dan and Naphtali, Bilhah's sons, lighted upon the rest of the men who had fled and escaped from the second tower, and they smote them all. And the sons of Jacob smote all the inhabitants of the city of Sartan. But the women and the little ones they left in the city and did not slay them. And all the inhabitants of the city of Sartan were powerful men. One of them could pursue 1,000. 2 of them would not flee from 10,000 of the rest of men. And the sons of Jacob slew all the inhabitants of the city of Sartan with the edge of the sword, and no man stood against them. And they left the women in the city. This is the end of the second day. And the sons of Jacob took all the spoil of the city and captured what they desired. And they took flocks and herds and property from the city. And Jacob's seed did unto Sartan and its inhabitants as they had done to Khazar and its inhabitants. And they turned and went away. That is where we're going to stop today. Thank you so much for joining me. Isn't this just amazing, the things that we are seeing? If this were in Torah, if we could see these mighty men fighting against the nations, the people of Canaan, this is Ham's seed. Would we change things differently? Would we do things differently? I think we would. I think this has been hidden from us. That's my personal opinion, I know. But let's see what comes out of the Vatican. Now that we've taken the Vatican and we've got that library, there's going to be some amazing things that we're going to see coming out of that library. I wonder if we're going to see a different edition of the Tanakh. I wouldn't be surprised. Are there books that have been taken out of it? Again, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, this is where we're going to stop today. You guys, thank you for joining me. We're going to see another 5 days in the next 2 weeks. These are huge battles. These men, have our bodies been weakened to the point that we can't do things that we were made to do? Can Yehovah's men, the Ish, the Ezra men of the earth, do things that the sons of Adam can't do? I think it's true. I think they can. And we may just see this in the future. Well, we're going to stop here. We'll catch you next time. Thank you for joining me. Bye now.